All right, let's talk about a piece of tech that was basically the unsung hero of the pre-SQL world. You've probably never heard of it, but it was quietly running everything behind the scenes. It's called Model 204, and believe me, it was thinking in tables way before it was cool.
You know, it's so easy to take relational databases for granted these days. But let's rewind for a second. Imagine a world before SQL was everywhere. What do you think was the workhorse engine powering our most vital systems? I'm talking everything from your taxes to your flights. Well, the answer, it might actually surprise you.
Okay, so to really get why Model 204 was such a big deal, you've got to picture the 1970s. The entire digital world, it was basically run by these enormous IBM mainframes. But the databases they used, well, they were hierarchical or network models, and they were so rigid. Seriously, trying to get data out of them was like trying to find your way through a concrete maze that you couldn't change. It was a nightmare.
And then a challenger appears. This was a database that completely broke the mold.
And that challenger was Model 204. Now here's what's so interesting about it. It wasn't just a database for storing stuff. No, it was a whole high-performance environment for building applications and handling these massive transaction-heavy workloads all inside one system on a mainframe.
So you're probably wondering, how did it pull this off? Well, Model 204 brought some truly revolutionary ideas to the table for its time. First off, it used these table-like structures, which, just made data so much easier to understand. Then, it had indexed files, which was a huge deal for fast retrieval. I mean, we're talking lightning speed for the era. And get this, it had its own built-in scripting language. You didn't have to bolt on another system to write your logic. That combination of features, that was its secret sauce.
And all that power wasn't just sitting in a lab somewhere. Oh no, Model 204 became the invisible engine powering society's most critical infrastructure.
I mean, just think about this for a second. We're talking about the 70s and 80s here. And this system could handle thousands of concurrent users, people hitting the database and changing data all at the same time. And it did it seamlessly. That was an absolutely massive technical achievement back then.
And it wasn't just about the number of people, it was the sheer volume of work they were doing. We're talking millions of transactions being processed every single day. That kind of performance wasn't just nice to have, it was absolutely essential for the kinds of massive operations that depended on it.
So, where was all this heavy lifting happening? Well, in places where speed was non-negotiable and failure was simply not an option. We're talking about the IRS tax systems, the airline reservation networks keeping planes in the air, critical national security databases, major banking systems, processing all our money, and even the core telecommunications infrastructure. Model 204 was the trusted backbone for all of it.
So how on earth did it manage to be so powerful and flexible, decades before modern databases? Well, it was relational in spirit. Let's dig into how it achieved its power.
Okay, this comparison really lays it all out. On the one hand, you had the old models, think rigid, predefined paths to your data, super complex to navigate, and you had to write separate programs just to do anything. But then look at Model 204's approach. We're talking flexible, dynamic queries, easy to access table-like structures, and all that procedural logic was integrated right in. It was a total game changer, a complete paradigm shift.
So let's peek under the hood for a sec. The secret to its speed was using these really clever techniques like hashed and indexed files. To actually talk to the database, developers used a proprietary language. Now, it wasn't SQL, that hadn't really taken over yet, but it was this powerful procedural language that felt pretty familiar if you knew your way around something like BASIC or COBOL. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It wasn't relational in the SQL sense, but it was relational in spirit. See, it didn't use the formal relational algebra or the SQL language that we all know today. But the whole idea behind it, the philosophy, was about connecting data flexibly, just like you would in tables. It totally captured the spirit of the relational revolution that was just around the corner.
So, what does this all mean in the grand scheme of things? What's its place in database history? Well, it turns out Model 204 has a pretty elite legacy.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, right? Back in the 60s, you had those super rigid hierarchical and network models. Then bam, the 70s hit, and Model 204 comes along and proves that, hey, performance and flexibility can actually coexist. It was the perfect bridge, really. It showed what was possible and paved the way for the commercial SQL databases that completely took over in the 80s.
And that leads us to this final thought, which I think is perfect. It's not just old, it's elite. And that's exactly right. Model 204 isn't just some dusty old piece of tech history.
For its time, it was an absolutely elite piece of engineering. It solved enormous problems and was, without a doubt, one of the giants that helped build the modern world. A true legend in the history of databases.